Hey everyone, welcome back to the shop. So today I'm building this really simple puzzle end table out of two 2x4s. So my friends at Modern Maker Podcast issued a challenge over on Instagram to build something out of two 2x4s. And I wanted to help promote that because I thought it was a really cool idea, so I grabbed a couple 2x4s and decided I'm going to make this table. This is a pretty simple build and I didn't do anything fancy, no crazy joinery. I started with the 2x4s and cut everything to length. Now when you're dealing with 2x4s from like the big box store, they're going to be all wonky and twisted. If you're real lucky, you might find something straight. So rather than milling these things up while they're large, I cut them down to small pieces so there's less room for error. Now I cut everything to size, or to length rather, right from the very start. And then after I got everything cut to length, I came back and trimmed everything to the actual sizes that I needed. So I cut the pieces of the top so it would end up being 17 inches deep, 17 inches wide, and then I cut everything down to the sizes that I needed for the other pieces. Now I had my son mark out a arch on one of the aprons, and then I used that arch to copy it onto the other 4 aprons. I wanted to add a little arch detail, completely not necessary. I just think it added a nice little flair. So after I marked those out, I cut all the arches, and this is what's left over. Now most of these I can use. I'm using the big ones for paint stirs. The little wedges pieces I'm going to use later in this build, and the other pieces I'm using for glue. So really all I had left for scrap was those 3 small pieces of material. So really planned this one out well. Now after I had everything cut out, the first thing I'm going to do is any glue ups that need to be done, so I can, while those are drying, I can be doing other things. So I glued up the top first. I used a little tiny bit of salt in the glue. When I glued it together, that keeps things from sliding around, especially since I need those to line up really well. And then remember those wedges I cut earlier? Well, I'm using them here. Rather than using clamps, I just got some scrap 2x4s out of my scrap bin, and I screwed them down to my work surface, and then I'm just going to use the wedges that I cut out of the arches from the aprons, if that makes a whole lot of sense, as a clamp. So I put the leg system in there, put it all the way I needed it, clamped it, and made sure to double check it so it was nice and square. Really the most important part when you're building an end table or a chair or really anything with 4 legs is keeping that base as square as possible. So I double checked it, rechecked it, and checked it again to make sure it was square. Now it was just a rinse and repeat for the other side, and I let those set up for about 45 minutes. Now I know most of you are going, well, he's not using any tenonry or anything going on. No, I'm just gluing the frame together at this point. Later I'm going to come back in and put fasteners. So basically same situation. After the 2 sides were dry, I used that same clamping system, added the 3rd side to the base, I guess, and then while that was drying, I started working on the top. Now the top is really what makes this thing unique, and it's really pretty easy. Once you have the panel glued up, I cut out a little section like a little rabbit around the bottom just to add an interesting detail. When you fasten the top to the bottom, it's going to give you a little reveal, so that gives a little character. Now I laid this top out in just 5 segments, so there's 5 one way, 5 the other, and I wanted to make this puzzle. So I just simply went through and drew things out by hand, different puzzle pieces around those 5 segments. So I kind of had this pattern to start with, and then drew the puzzle pieces in around that. And then came back with the router, and I have an 1/8 inch bit in here. I had a bunch of 1/8 inch bits from a while ago. I bought a handful of them, and it's a good thing because they kept breaking. If I were to do this again, I would use just a V-groove bit or something a little bit more robust. But I did manage to get through routing the whole thing out with the 1/8 inch bit, and it worked all right. I think I broke 5 of these bits going through this. I was probably going a little too fast or a little aggressive. So after I had all the lines routed in, I came back with some hand sandpaper and sanded in the groove just to catch any of the little pieces that had furred off, and then use a sander to do the mass of it. Now I wanted to add a detail so it looked like the puzzle pieces went right straight through the tops, and to do that I just kept the same 1/8 bit in the router and then routed the just from the front to the back so it looks like the puzzle pieces continue through. And at that point it's just a lot of hand sanding, kind of sanding up, cleaning up all the areas where I used the router bit and knocking the edges down. And then so with the top all cleaned up, I took it outside, and I'm just going to fill in all these lines with black spray paint. This is really cheap black spray paint I picked up at I think at Walmart for like $1. and then came back and sanded it all off once it had dried. Now once everything had dried and I sanded it off, I did hit it again with 120 on the orbital sander, and then I'm just using a can of spray lacquer to finish it up. Now back to the base. Remember how I just glued everything together and I didn't use any tenonry? Well, I'm not getting crazy with this. I want it to be a quick build, so I'm just doing some fasteners, and I'm basically running 3-inch fasteners all the way through the face into both the stretcher and the apron on all 4 sides, and that's going to hold this thing together plenty strong for this application. Again, this is a real fast build. I wasn't looking for some, anything wild and crazy. I just wanted to get it done. So after adding the fasteners and giving it a good sanding, I put on 1 coat of spray lacquer. Didn't go overboard with the finish on it, just wanted to give the wood a little protection and add some color to it. And then the next step is to fasten the base to the top. Now to do that, I just drilled a hole right straight through the apron. It's a 1/4-inch hole, and then I added a 1/8 fastener, and that's just going to give the top a little bit of wiggle room to move if there's any flexion or expansion, which there probably will be here in South Carolina. Now, if you guys would like to get involved with this challenge, it's a 2x4 challenge. You can do that by heading over to Instagram and checking out Modern Maker Podcast. And also while you're there, don't forget to check out my Instagram as well. Thanks for watching.